I'm coming at you with one of the most intriguing thought experiments I've ever tackled. Over the years, I've delved deep into history, theology, and the hidden layers of our most iconic stories, and I can tell you firsthand that the narratives we take for granted often hide more questions than answers. Today, we're exploring a what-if scenario that will challenge everything you think you know about one of the most pivotal moments in history. What if Judas never betrayed Jesus? Now, before we dive in, let me tell you why you should stick with me on this journey. I've spent decades researching and experiencing the interplay between history and myth, engaging with scholars, theologians, and even skeptics to uncover layers of meaning behind these age-old stories. My experiences have taught me that every legend is a doorway to understanding not just the past, but also our present and future. So, trust me when I say that today's exploration is going to be as enlightening as it is provocative. Imagine a world where that fateful act of betrayal never occurred. Picture Jesus walking a different path, free from the looming shadow of Judas's infamous kiss. How would that have altered the course of history? Would the message of sacrifice and redemption have held the same power, or would a completely new narrative have emerged? I invite you to journey with me through this alternate timeline, one that challenges our deepest assumptions about fate, loyalty, and the human capacity for change. From the very start, we know that Judas's betrayal was seen as a necessary event in the grand narrative of redemption. It set into motion the series of events that led to the crucifixion, the resurrection, and ultimately the birth of Christianity as we know it. But what if we peel back the layers of destiny and ask ourselves, what if Judas had remained loyal? In this alternate reality, the dynamics between Jesus and his disciples, the reactions of the Roman authorities, and even the very essence of the gospel message would have been radically different. Without Judas's betrayal, Jesus might have continued his ministry without the existential pressure of an impending sacrifice. This would have meant that the dramatic climax of betrayal, trial, and crucifixion would never have occurred in the form we are familiar with. Instead, Jesus might have focused solely on teaching his disciples about love, forgiveness, and the coming of a new era of understanding. Imagine sermons that emphasized unity and unyielding loyalty rather than the painful lessons of betrayal and redemption. The absence of such a dramatic climax might have given his teachings a gentler, perhaps even more inclusive tone. This thought experiment forces us to consider the role of conflict in storytelling. Throughout history, some of our most powerful narratives have hinged on conflict, on moments when everything seems to fall apart before it all comes together again. In our familiar story, Judas's betrayal acts as that critical turning point, catalyzing events that ultimately lead to a transformative resurrection. Without that betrayal, the narrative might have lacked the tension that makes it so compelling. However, it could also have led to a more harmonious interpretation of Jesus' message, one that centers on unblemished trust and unwavering commitment. The question then becomes, would humanity be capable of grasping the full weight of Jesus' teachings without the dramatic backdrop of sacrifice? Another fascinating angle to consider is how the absence of betrayal would affect the other disciples and the early church. The dramatic transformation seen in figures like Peter and John, who experienced profound personal growth after witnessing the events of the crucifixion and resurrection, might not have occurred. The personal journeys of these disciples were deeply intertwined with the experience of loss and redemption. Without Judas's treachery, the evolution of their characters might have taken an entirely different path. Perhaps their faith would have been less tested, less refined by the crucible of grief and betrayal. On the other hand, a more consistent message of loyalty might have inspired a different kind of strength, one built on unshakable trust rather than hard-won redemption. Now, let's dive into the character of Judas himself. Historically, Judas is cast as the ultimate traitor, his name synonymous with betrayal. But what if, in this alternative timeline, Judas had chosen a different path? What if he had become a pillar of unwavering support, contributing positively to the ministry and even helping to spread the message of hope? In this scenario, Judas might have been remembered not as a villain, but as a misunderstood figure who had the potential for redemption all along. His transformation from a symbol of treachery to one of loyalty and insight would have added a whole new layer of complexity to the story. It would challenge us to reconsider the nature of good and evil, suggesting that every person holds within them the capacity for profound change. This idea also raises questions about the nature of destiny and free will. The traditional narrative implies that certain events were fated to occur, that Judas's betrayal was a necessary part of a divine plan. But if Judas had chosen a different course, would that have meant the plan was altered, or was the plan flexible enough to accommodate change? This is where the debate between determinism and free will comes into sharp focus. Some argue that every action, no matter how seemingly insignificant, has the power to reshape history. Others believe that certain events are so crucial that they cannot be altered without unraveling the very fabric of destiny. In our scenario, if Judas had not betrayed Jesus, then every subsequent event would have to be re-examined. Would the Roman authorities have intervened in a different manner? Would the political landscape of the time have shifted dramatically? The ripple effects of this one change would likely extend far beyond the immediate circle of Jesus and his disciples. Consider the impact on Jesus' own evolution as a leader and teacher. Without the ultimate act of betrayal, Jesus might have faced a different set of challenges. Perhaps he would have encountered greater resistance from those who opposed his teachings, or maybe his message of love and unity would have resonated even more powerfully in a world free from the scars of betrayal. His interactions with the Pharisees, the Romans, and even his own followers would have taken on a different tone. The lessons he imparted about forgiveness and redemption might have been delivered in a context that celebrated unbroken trust rather than a shattered bond mended by resurrection. This alternate path could have fostered a community that was more centered on continuous dialogue and mutual support rather than the dramatic cycles of fall and redemption that we are so familiar with. Another angle to explore is the broader cultural and historical impact of such a change. The story of Jesus and Judas has not only shaped religious thought but has also influenced art, literature, and even modern pop culture. The image of Judas as a traitor is deeply embedded in our collective consciousness, and it has inspired countless works of art, literature, and film. If Judas had remained a loyal disciple, the entire corpus of religious art and storytelling might have looked very different. Iconic works that revolve around themes of betrayal, sacrifice, and resurrection would have had to find new sources of dramatic tension. Instead of a narrative built on conflict, we might have seen a series of stories celebrating unity and the unwavering power of loyalty. It's a thought that stretches the imagination and challenges us to think about how intertwined our cultural expressions are with the events of the past. Now, let's take a moment to explore the psychological dimensions of this alternate reality. The human psyche is deeply affected by narratives of betrayal and forgiveness. Many of us find solace in the idea that even the deepest wounds can be healed through acts of love and redemption. The story of Jesus' crucifixion and subsequent resurrection offers a powerful metaphor for overcoming betrayal and finding hope in the midst of despair. But if Judas had not betrayed Jesus, that metaphor might have taken on a different hue. Without the element of betrayal, the narrative of resurrection might have been less about emerging from darkness and more about the steady, unbroken journey of faith. The absence of a dramatic downfall would have forced believers to find meaning in the everyday acts of loyalty and kindness, rather than in the transformative power of redemption following a fall from grace. This shift in focus could have profound implications for how people understand their own lives. In a world where betrayal is not seen as a necessary catalyst for transformation, the emphasis might shift toward the importance of everyday virtues. The lesson might be that the true measure of faith is not in the ability to rise after a fall, but in the consistent, daily act of remaining true to one's values. This perspective could foster a culture that values stability and continuity over dramatic, sporadic moments of crisis and change. It's a quieter kind of strength, one that celebrates the steady hum of loyalty rather than the explosive energy of redemption. As we wander deeper into this alternative timeline, it's important to consider the ripple effects on the early Christian community. Without the crucifixion as a defining moment, the formation of early church doctrine might have taken an entirely different course. The central tenets of Christianity, sacrifice, atonement, and resurrection, are all intricately tied to the narrative of betrayal. In a scenario where Judas remains faithful, the theological debates that shaped the early church might have centered more on the virtues of unwavering commitment and the power of collective faith. The early Christian texts might have emphasized a more optimistic view of humanity, one where the potential for betrayal was replaced by a celebration of the inherent goodness in every person. This could have led to a form of Christianity that was more inclusive, more focused on community and mutual support, rather than on the redemptive power of overcoming sin. It's also worth pondering the implications for interfaith dialogue. The story of Jesus is not confined to Christianity. It resonates across multiple religions and cultures. In Islam, for instance, Jesus is revered as a prophet, and the narratives surrounding his life are both similar and distinct from those in Christian tradition. A version of history where Judas did not betray Jesus could have opened up new avenues for dialogue between different faiths, providing a common ground built on the ideals of loyalty, trust, and the unbroken bond between teacher and disciple. This shared narrative might have even paved the way for a more harmonious coexistence among different religious traditions, highlighting the universal values that transcend dogma and doctrine. Now, let's consider the political ramifications of this alternate timeline. The power dynamics in Judea, and indeed throughout the Roman Empire, were heavily influenced by the events that unfolded around Jesus' ministry. The crucifixion was not just a religious event. It was a political statement, a moment when the Roman authorities asserted their control over a potentially destabilizing movement. Without the dramatic turn of events brought on by Judas's betrayal, the political landscape might have shifted significantly. Perhaps the Roman leadership would have been forced to take a different approach to managing the growing influence of Jesus and his followers. Instead of a swift and decisive crackdown, we might have seen a more gradual process of integration or even co-optation of the movement into the fabric of the Roman state. This alternative path could have led to a very different evolution of Western civilization, one where the line between religious and political authority was drawn in entirely new ways. Throughout all of this, one theme remains constant: the profound impact of individual choices on the course of history. The decision made by one man in a moment of weakness has echoed through the centuries, shaping the very foundations of our culture and belief systems. But what if that decision had been different? What if, in that crucial moment, Judas had chosen loyalty over betrayal? It's a question that invites us to reflect on our own lives and the choices we make every day. Are we, like Judas, capable of changing the course of history through a single pivotal decision? Or are we bound by the inexorable forces of destiny, unable to deviate from the path set before us? The beauty of this thought experiment is that it forces us to confront the complexities of human nature. It reminds us that our stories, our histories, are not set in stone but are shaped by the countless decisions we make, both big and small. It challenges us to think about the nature of fate and free will, of destiny and personal responsibility. And in doing so, it opens up a space for us to imagine a world that is, at its core, more compassionate and forgiving. A world where the possibility of redemption is not tied to the drama of betrayal, but is woven into the very fabric of our daily lives. I know this might seem like a wild and far-fetched idea, but it's precisely these kinds of questions that push us to think deeper and question the narratives we've inherited. The story of Judas and Jesus is more than just a religious myth. It's a reflection of the eternal struggle between light and darkness, trust and betrayal, hope and despair. By reimagining this narrative, we are not only engaging in a fascinating intellectual exercise, but we are also exploring the very essence of what it means to be human. We are forced to ask ourselves, what if our lives were defined not by our failures, but by our ability to rise above them? What if every moment of betrayal could be transformed into a moment of profound loyalty and love? As we reach the end of this exploration, I want to leave you with a few final thoughts. The idea that one single decision could alter the course of history is both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that we all have the potential to shape our own destinies and to influence the world around us in ways we might never have imagined. Whether you see Judas as a tragic figure, a misunderstood soul, or simply as a symbol of the complexities of human nature, this thought experiment challenges us to look beyond the surface of our traditional narratives and to embrace the full spectrum of possibility that lies within each of us. In the end, the story of what might have been is as important as the story of what is. It invites us to re-examine our beliefs, to question the inevitability of our past, and to consider the profound impact that every choice can have. It's a reminder that history is not a fixed tapestry, but a living, breathing narrative that we all contribute to with every action, every decision, and every moment of courage. If you found this exploration as mind-opening and thought-provoking as I did, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that have shaped our world. I truly believe that by questioning the narratives of the past, we can forge a brighter, more compassionate future. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video as we continue to explore the untold stories of history together.